What you said to me is I usually think about what I would tell my younger self, and that was really helpful to me, because it honestly took me down memory lane. I was awake one morning and just started, you know, thinking about my teenage years and what was most prominent for me in my teenage years. And what came up for me was, it was what I'm calling my love story. So, you know, that sounds a bit dramatic, but it really was for me, and still is. It's my first love, and I think those are, you know, for most people they're pretty impactful and they stay with us on memories. But I'm not the sort of person that really goes down memory lane very much, I have to say. So I was kind of surprised about how much came up in my memory, you know, about all the things that had happened, and who I was back then, and how I was feeling, and the way I used to think. And it was really, it's been quite eye-opening to remember all those things, because you know, 40 years later, here I am, completely, I would say, quite a different person. Obviously aged lots of relationships under my belt now, but this first one, well, really how I was feeling, when I thought about how I was feeling like there was a big hole. I was feeling like, you know, so as a teenager, I think we all do this as teenagers. It's like we think about boys or girls depending on, you know, who we want to be with, but we get really drawn into the stories. And I was a big fan of watching romantic films and loved the fairy tales and wanted all that fairy tale ending and all that, but really swept up into the romance of things, and was kind of desperate, I think, to fall in love and find my Prince Charming. So basically it happened when I was at college. I was 16, and I used to have to catch a couple of buses to college and a couple of buses out. And this college that I went to had a department that was catered for foreign students. So they were learning English as a foreign language. So there were lots of Arabic students, Middle Eastern students there at the time. And I remember my friends being really, you know, some of them were very good looking, very suave, very, you know, I was 16 and they were like 18, 19, 20. So at that age, it was all very, you know, it was really something special to be with them, to talk to them, to sit on the bus next to them, one of that sort of teenage stuff, you know. So I can remember all that. And I really, really, really believed at this point in time, I really, really believed that my happiness depended on the outside world. Particularly at that age, I remember really clearly, like having my Prince Charming in my life, having this man that was going to make me happy and was going to do all the things that I'd seen on the movies, you know, on the films, all that. I was going to be everything to him, and he was going to be everything to me. I was really, really wanted that story to become true. I didn't even see it as a story. I thought it was real life, to be honest. I thought that's how life worked. I really did. Although, you know, I wasn't seeing that particularly in my household at the time, but it's what I wanted. It's what I really wanted. I really felt that was true and could be true for me. And so sitting on the bus on the way home one day, I'm sitting next to this guy and he's trying to talk to me. I honestly didn't fancy him whatsoever. I can really remember that he quite scared me. He had this big beard and very dark, and I was a bit scared of him, to be honest. Come Christmas time, we had a Christmas disco. And that was when one of them, not him, one of the Middle Eastern chaps asked me if he could take me to the disco. And I was so excited. So off we trot, and it was all, you know, butterflies in the stomach and all that sort of thing. And what happened was this other guy that sat next to me on the bus, who ended up being the one, if you like, but he didn't like the fact that I'd gone to the disco with this other guy, and they ended up having this fight. And you imagine, I'm 16, and this fight, but actually I quite liked it, if I'm honest. When I think back to it, I thought, I did and I didn't, but I was quite like, two men fighting over me. This is what happens in the movies, right? So it's like, you know, I'm thinking, this is okay. This guy really wants to be with me. So from that's when our romance began, from that Christmas disco when I was 16. So this went on from 16, I turned 17. And unfortunately for me, at 17, he had to move away to another town, a local town called Rugby. And that meant that we spent a lot of time together. Obviously, every day we were at college together, and then we would go out in the evenings and things like that. At 17, he moved away. My whole life then depended on, this is what reminds, it's like my whole life, because I saw my happiness in him, and I wasn't willing to look outside. I was blinkered. I just saw that my happiness totally depended on him. So my whole life depended on Saturdays, because that was the day that I got on the bus, went to rugby, came back home, and then lived the rest of my life the rest of my week waiting for Saturday. And it was like this, when I look at it now, it's just crazy, but that's how it was at the time, because I 100% believed that this feeling of being special, he made me feel special. He made me feel wanted. He made me feel desired. He made me feel needed. I felt secure when I was with him, and when I wasn't, I didn't. And it was that, and so it really, really, really looked like everything depended on him, and my happiness totally depended on him. And I kind of lived the whole week waiting to see him just on that Saturday, And oh my goodness, if we argued on the Saturday and we fell out or whatever, because we did, then I would be heartbroken because I couldn't see him. And in those days, there were no such thing as mobiles or internet or, any of the stuff that we've got today. I was, if he phoned me, I was lucky. He didn't have a phone in his student accommodation they lived in. So it was all really living from Saturday to Saturday. And then when I was 18, then our wonderful Prime Minister of the time, Margaret Thatcher, I can remember, put the international fees up for the foreign students. So his parents sent him off to America because the student fees went up so much. So now I'm losing, in my mind, I'm losing my key to happiness, my key to being okay is moving all the way across the world in America. I'm now 18, I've just graduated from college, I'm to get my first job now. So as I said, no internet, no anything. I can remember then I'm depending on the airmail letters coming. I'm depending on snail mail it's like waking up every morning, running downstairs. Is there a letter on on the front doormat? Isn't there a letter on the front doormat? If there was, I was happy because I could hear from him and hear what was going on. If there wasn't, I was upset. I was down. And so all I wanted to do then was, so imagine I'm 18 and all I wanted to do now was save up to go, and because he was going to be there for 3 years. All I want to do now is save up, work, save, and get out there. Because that was the plan. I'm going to go and live in America. So that's what I did. I put my head down. When I look back at it again, 18, I'm thinking I should have been out enjoying myself with friends, doing what 18-year-olds do, right? But no, not me. I'm sitting at home pining for him, thinking, again, if I can't be with him, I can't be happy. I remember actually, I must have had some anxiety. Because I remember I ended up going to the doctors and having this sort of racing heart and thinking I was dying and things like that. Going to the doctors all upset, and he gave me diazepam and not really understanding what that meant. But when I look back at it now, obviously he just realised that I was very anxious. I didn't realise how anxious I was. 19, when I was 19, he came over to England for a visit and we got engaged. So that really was, now my parents were like, she must be going ahead with this thing, moving over there, and this is getting more serious than we thought. Because I think they probably hoped it fizzled out, but it didn't. Because I was quite a stubborn person then. I'm not quite. When I made up my mind I was going to do something, I was going to do it, and it didn't matter what anybody said. I got totally focused and got my eyes set on that, as I said, very blinkered. But I really believed that that's where my happiness was coming from, and that's why when I look back on it, that's why I just really, really believed that was the truth. And so, he goes back to America. So come Christmas, he came over for my sort of birthday time, which is June, and we got engaged. And then at Christmas, I'd got enough money. I managed to get my ticket together. I managed to get myself organised. And that was quite a trial, actually, but I won't go into all the details of that. It could take forever. So off I fly to America, I'm like flying off into the distance thinking, this is my life now. I just want to be with this man that makes me happy when we're okay. And so, of course, before that, I put on quite a lot of weight because I was miserable, actually, while I was waiting during that 1.5 year period. Just to backtrack a bit, I remember I put on loads of weight because I was comfort eating. I was comfort eating because I wasn't happy. And then when I knew I was going to America, then it was drastic diet. So so now I'm like, my happiness depends on the airmail letter coming through and the number on the scale. You know, it was like those two things. They were only two things that I was really, really interested in. Was, you know, am I losing enough weight? And will I be looking good enough to how he remembered me and all that sort of thing, to when he sees me, because I want him to be wowed and all that stuff. So off I trot to America. And you know, as relationships go, there were a lot of ups, but there were a lot of downs too. And I was still seeing this in this way, that, you know, if we weren't okay, I wasn't okay. If this relationship didn't go well, I wasn't okay. I wasn't enough. That's what we're talking about today, right? I wasn't enough. There's something wrong with me. If he wasn't happy and the relationship wasn't good, then clearly there's something wrong with me. And why is he not making me happy? Why does he not want to make me happy? Why is he not saying the right things? Why is he not behaving in the right way? Why is he not looking at me like he used to? You know, and all the stories that were coming up in my head that I completely believed to be true, completely pointed in the direction there must be something wrong with me. You know, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I enough for him? Why can't we just be happy? And this went on I was out there for 2.5 years. So, so from the age of 19, and then practically it was when he came to an end of his studies there, he called it a day. He kind of really said, look, I can't do this anymore, blah, 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 blah. And what did I do? I just called up my dad and said, Dad, what can I do? And he said, look, because he bought me, my dad had been over and visited, bought me a car for my 21st, bless him. And he said, sell the car, buy yourself a ticket and come home, which is just what I did. I was like, by now I'm back to little girl mode, just like wanting to run home because I didn't know what else to do. I remember regretting that a lot about a few months later, but at the time it seemed like the right thing to do, run home to Dad, you know, and go back to where I came from, and then I'll be safe and I'll be secure and I'll be okay again. That's what I believed. That's what I believed to be true. And it didn't quite work out like that, because the minute that I got home, I regretted leaving, but also I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel secure. I just felt this big hole again. There's this big hole of, what have I done? Why did I run home? Maybe I could have made it work if I stayed. Maybe, what ifs. And now this big hole needs filling again. And to me, it looks like an outside in job. It looks like he's the one that needs to fill the hole. So kind of started sparking up the relationship in a way. And even though he'd been the one that finished it and had said some not nice things and just not been that great, but it was better than nothing. It was better than feeling like this. It's better to have somebody that at least says he loves you still, even though he doesn't treat you like he loves you, but he says he loves you. So it was better to at least hang on to a little bit of that than to be on my own with this big hole, not knowing how to fill it. And so that's kind of what happened. And I kind of kidded myself that this relationship thing could work from a distance. And I went in and out of that for a year or so, I think. And after it wasn't even a year of being back in England, I just couldn't settle back down. And of course, now I'm thinking it's England that's the problem as well. So I applied for some jobs to get a job abroad. I thought that was the thing to do. I thought, get out of England. I'll be much happier if I'm somewhere else, doing something else in a different country, because clearly England's not my place to be anymore. And that's how I ended up in Spain. This is where I am now. 33 years I've been living here. So 1986 I came out, and actually I got a job as a Thomson rep, and they sent me to Benidorm, of all places. And it was literally the last place on earth I wanted to be sent to. I really said that to my friends. I don't care where I go in the world, as long as they don't send me to Benidorm. What happens? I get my letter and it says, you are going to Benidorm. It's not that funny, Anne. But obviously I was meant to be here, because then, I ended up meeting who's now my ex-husband, but meeting came in April. By August, I'd met him, and a couple of years later, we got married, and we had 2 beautiful children, and the rest is history, as I say. But it kind of, this transference of, so it went from that, you know, my love story, if you like, my first love, to, you know, somebody else in between, and then my husband became the object of, now you make me happy, you know, it's your job to make me happy, because this is how it works, right? I mean, that's what we're led to believe. On, you know, everybody around us is saying that. Everything around us is saying that something on the outside brings us happiness. And so I, you know, totally believe that. So my kids were to bring me happiness, and my husband was to bring me happiness. That's what seemed to make sense to me at the time. And of course, it doesn't work that way. And so I was quite disappointed. Found myself going through a lot of heartache over and over and over again, because I was believing something I can clearly see now, but I didn't know at the time. I just, again, thought it was me. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought it was me. There was something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with him, or there's something wrong with marriage, or there's something wrong with something out there, but it clearly isn't working, and really not understanding why. Until about 15 years ago, when I started to get interested in personal development. I started getting interested because I wasn't happy. You know, it's like, start buying the self-help books, start reading, you know, I think Oprah Winfrey was on TV then. I think she was my first probably introduction, thinking about it, to sort of this personal development field. I love watching Oprah. And so started getting curious. She'd recommend books, and I started buying the books, and yeah, just looking at audios, books, CDs, until fast forward to 2008, I ended up on an NLP coaching course. And then I got introduced to Louise Hay. I did a training with, I trained to be a Louise Hay teacher back in 2009. And that's where, because with Louise Hay, that's where I started to see, and with the NLP and the coaching, that, you know, started to get an inkling, obviously, about self-love. Now I'm starting to realize, oh, this is not about out there, this is about in here. And the semblance of happiness comes from the inside, not from the outside. So I was getting there, I was getting the messages that happiness comes from the inside, it's not an outside job. But what I hadn't seen, and what really became glaringly obvious to me, was in 2010. So I did this NLP course, and I got myself onto an NLP email list by the gentleman called Jamie Smart. And one day, an email dropped into my inbox, and then the headline said, "If the secret's so great, show me the money." And I was really curious about this, because I thought, yes, so The Secret, I'd watched that movie about the law of attraction, and tried that too, tried loads of things, and nothing seemed to be working. So it's like, okay, if the secret's so great, show me the money. And money is always something that I want more of. So I bought the DVD set, sat down and watched it here in Spain. And something he said in that, he did a 2-day event in London that I recorded, just hit me, really impacted me. And I wasn't quite sure at the time what it was, but when I've looked back on it, obviously I have many times now, I realised what it was what he was saying was that thought creates feeling 100% of the time. And it was this 100% of the time that I heard that really impacted me, because I think I'd had a sense of, oh yeah, it's an inside out job. You know, okay, yeah, we all know happiness doesn't come from material things. You know, by this time I'm realizing material things don't bring me happiness. I kind of knew that, but I hadn't seen this thing about, because this was about money. He was talking about money this particular weekend. And I was like, well, obviously money brings you financial security, doesn't it? You know, everybody knows that. But he was saying exactly the opposite. He was saying, no, it doesn't work like that. He was saying, no, our feelings of security, our feelings of well-being, our feelings of clarity, our feelings of happiness, our feelings of joy and everything, anger, frustration, irritation, all of it is coming from thought in the moment. Now that for me was pretty new. Even though I'd done the NLP and I was in the coaching world, it was this 100% of the time, it cannot work another way. That's what I was hearing. It was like, really? It can't work another way. So that means when I'm not feeling happy, when I'm not feeling enough, when I'm not feeling great or good, or when I'm feeling stressed, that's coming from me, from the thought in the moment. And he, at the end of his 2-day event, said, look, you don't have to, I don't want you to believe me. Test it for yourself. So I thought, okay, I'll do that, because I'm a pretty practical, logical person. I want to make sure I'm not being duped. So I did. I started looking into my life. I started, started testing. And one of the places I looked at was the weather, because, I still say this, I have to say, I always say to people, I live in Spain because of the sunshine. I'm not good I don't like being cold. I like being warm. So I was looking at this. So if it's true that the sunshine makes me feel good, if it's true that the sunshine is what makes me in a good mood, what makes me feel bright and breezy, let me have a look at that. And of course, we have something like 320 days of sunshine here where I live in the Costa Blanca. And I can tell you for a fact, I'm not happy 320 days of the year, 24 hours a day. So that's a pretty big giveaway. I would have plenty of times on sunny days when I was feeling stressed or frustrated or angry or upset or, arguing with the kids or whatever. So, if the sunshine was making me happy, surely I would be happy for 320 days of the year now. So that was one place I looked. And then, of course, another place to look at the time with my partner, he used to have this dreadful habit of leaving his socks on the floor wherever he happened to take them off, whether that was in the bedroom. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate, a lot of women can relate to this. A lot of, in the bedroom, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, not in the kitchen probably, but, in the living room, wherever he happened to be, there'd be a pair of socks. And of course, I'd look at these socks and think, these socks, the fact that these socks on the floor are really peeing me off. Is it the socks, or is it the way I'm thinking about this? Is it this thought in the moment thing that Jamie was talking about? And sure enough, as the days went by, I could see that some days they really peed me off. It looked that way. And other days it wasn't so bad. And other days I'd just laugh about it. It's like, oh God, here we go again. It kind of felt quite lighthearted about it. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? I thought the socks were really peeing me off, but actually maybe it's the way I'm thinking, what's happening in my mind or my state of mind. So I started to notice this state of mind. It depended on where I was in the moment as to how I was thinking about things. It had nothing to do with what was happening on the outside. Another example would have been the drivers on the road. So I checked that one out too. We don't have loads of traffic here, so we can't call it traffic, but I could get pretty peed off if somebody cut in front of me, on some days. One of my pet peeves is people not indicating and telling me where they're going. You have that one too. And sometimes it didn't bother me. Sometimes I'd be like just singing along with my music, and it was like, oh, well, no rush. We're going where we're going. We'll get there in the end. So it really, as I said, I was testing this out in my own life and noticing it really only does work one way. It really does work one way. I really am only experiencing what thought is bringing to me in the moment. So that was revolutionary to me. It really was. And so Jamie had said that he was going to put on more of these live events over the next year. And I can remember turning to my partner then and saying, next time he does one of these, I'm going. Now, I went. So I did go to the next one in London, flew over to London, sat in the audience for 2 days. And basically, he repeated the same thing again. I can't remember what the title of the next one was. It might have been Superstars, NLP and Coaches or something. And I went along to that one, and the message was pretty much the same. I went to the next one. The message was pretty much the same. I went to the next one. And what was curious to me, when I look back at it, it was curious to me is my personality does not like repetition. I would get very bored very quickly. I didn't like to watch the same movie twice, or didn't like to do anything again, really. It was like I wanted fresh and new. I've seen that, been there, didn't read the same book again. I've done that one. Let's move to the next thing. So it's curious to me that I kept going back to these events, kind of already knowing what he was going to say. Now I look back on that and I see, for me, it was people talk about innate wisdom. but something, the wisdom within me, something within me was pulling me to keep going back. It wasn't something I was doing consciously. It wasn't like it was a decision, but it was just a knowing. It was a knowing that, oh, I need to go again. Oh, I need to go again. Oh, not even I need to, I want to. I'm going again. I didn't really have to think about it and make it, oh, can I afford it? How much is a ticket? It was just like, oh, you're going. You're going. And I didn't really know why I kept going back, but I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I think it was dropping in deeper. It was dropping in deeper, and of course I wanted to explore more. And in those days, this was 2010. There was very little literature, interviews, resources. There were very little resources, and probably maybe that's why I kept going back to Jamie's live events. There was not much else to look at really. When we know, I know in this series that you're doing, people know, well, I don't know if they know it's about the 3 principles by Sydney Banks. I'm imagining many people have mentioned it by now, but this is what Jamie explained to us. This is an understanding, an inside out understanding that was uncovered by a gentleman called Sydney Banks back in the 1970s. And then I got very curious about that. So then I obviously went off and started finding other teachers, not just Jamie. So I came across other people, and I decided I wanted to start, just like you are now, interviewing people. But I did it on audio. We didn't have Zoom then, no such thing as Zoom. So, I was doing audio recordings and sharing them with people and my clients. And that was really what instigated it. I didn't know, as a coach, because by this time, as I said, I did my training course and I was coaching, and I still am. But I didn't know how to introduce the 3 principles to my clients, because it all felt so invisible. Well, it is invisible. It just felt so slippery and intangible, and I hadn't got the language for it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to interview people who know how to talk about it. So that's what I did, and that's how I met a lot of people in the world of the 3 principles, if you like. Lots of wonderful 3 principles teachers and coaches. But going back for me personally, so this big insight that I had, I didn't really see it at the time as a big insight, but I can look back and see how it's incrementally has helped me in my life to see that I don't have to take I don't have to take what's going on in here. I don't have to take it seriously. It's like, this is thought in the moment. It's creating a feeling. The feelings are like a feedback system for me, letting me know what I'm thinking in the moment. And they're not telling me anything else but what I'm thinking in the moment, not telling me anything about out there. Well, if this is not telling me anything, if my feeling's not telling me anything about out there, that was like, it like took so much away from me having to do. Like, I was, if I'm honest, I was a bit of a control freak. So my life was about controlling, kind of, if I go back to my relationships, about really trying to control how the outcomes, how people were behaving, how my partners were behaving by whatever means it took, because I thought my happiness depended on the way the relationship was. So that was just one aspect, but having to do so much controlling is very, very tiring. It takes a lot of energy trying to control the outside world. So the more that I started to see how it works, the less I needed to have on my mind, the less I needed to control. I didn't need to control the outside world at all, but it took me, and it still does, if I'm honest, I still forget sometimes. Oh, I don't need to do anything about that, because the way I'm feeling has got nothing to do with it, the fact that, I don't know, that I've had an argument with somebody, I don't actually need to make that right for me to feel okay. And I always used to stop me being a people pleaser on some level, I suppose, not that I've ever thought of myself as a people pleaser, but I think I don't like it. I don't like it when people are not happy. I think that's why I've got into the helping field, because that's why. So it's been quite a journey as a coach to see that my job isn't to rescue people. I think I probably thought there was that was my role on some level. And what I really see now is that my role is to be with people and help them uncover their own insights and cover their own, realize their own well-being the same way that I have. And you know, maybe I haven't talked to that point very well, but for me, this being enough really was seeing that the only reason I don't feel like I'm enough is because I believe thoughts that say otherwise, that tell me I'm not okay, that tell me I'm not good enough, that tell me they're not, you know, that popping up in my head. And I'm saying tell me because it sounded to me like I was being told I'm not good enough, or I was being told, you know, look at them over there, they're better than you, they're doing this, or look at him, he's not behaving in a very good way to you. What does that mean about you? So it was this constant stream of chatter that I thought was true and was really telling me a story about Sheela and who she is and how she behaves, and whether she was worthy, whether she was valuable, whether she was worth coming home for, whether she was worth making a phone call to, whether she was worth taking her out on a date, whether she was worth, you know, there was a lot. Now I'm thinking about it and talking to you, there was a lot about self-worth wrapped up in that. So that goes together with the being enough piece. So the more that I saw that, oh, this thinking in the moment stuff doesn't have to, I don't have to take any notice of it because it's thought in the moment. It's not got any power over me. Just thought. What's thought? Thought's an energy. I mean, thought is everything because, and this is kind of the paradox, isn't it? Because thought is everything. It brings a whole experience of life to us. And at the same time, we don't have to believe the thinking that is going on at the same time. We don't have to believe the thinking that's going on. It's the very, you know, I think this is the big thing that Sydney Banks pointed to. It's the very fact that we think. That's the simplicity for me of this, not the content of the thinking. So I've been pointing to the content a bit about, you know, about how the thoughts that go through my head. But the simplicity of it is saying that anything that we think, the very fact that we think, is the key to freedom, if you like, because the fact that we think means that there's thinking going on that creates a story continually. So whatever the story, we don't have to believe any of it. And that includes the good stuff as well. You know, all of it's made up, all of it. There's nothing that happens that isn't made up. It's all story, all of it. So, you know, we're free, if you like, at any point in time to create a new story. That's part of the simplicity for me. I'm going to stop there because I can see you maybe.
No, that's okay. No, I was only doing that. So if you went back, that your story sounds so familiar to me because I was just the same.
I imagine it does to a lot of girls.
To a lot of people. To a lot of people. Yeah. Because, so can you just go back? I'm thinking it would be quite helpful if you could just go back and say, well, there's two things that have come to me actually. Yeah. One is, so what does it mean if say your partner was not treating you well and saying horrible things about you or not bothering to phone you and so on? You're saying that doesn't mean anything about you. That doesn't mean that you're not good enough. So what does it mean?
What does it? It doesn't mean anything. You mean the fact that he's not, so he's not calling me. I was making up a story that doesn't, you know, okay, I was making up a story about that means something about me. I actually don't think it means anything.
So why is he doing it is what I mean, is like, so do you see what I mean? I think if I had been, what I'm thinking about is how I would have been looking at it.
Yeah. So what that means is he's living in his world of thought. You know, we're pointing here to separate realities. You know, he's absolutely living in his bubble of thought, So I've got no idea what's going on in his head. But I thought at that point in time, I thought I did. I was kind of mind reading. I was mind reading, I suppose, like making up a story about what he must be thinking about me. But actually, I had no idea what he was thinking about me. And quite often, well, probably 9 times out of 10, my stories would be completely wrong. You know, but when we got to talk, he wasn't thinking anything of the kind. But I had this whole, as I say, fantasy in my head about how a relationship, what a relationship should look like, and when it, you know, and expectations, I suppose, expectations that are made of thinking. And he fell short of my expectations, which made, you know, meant I had a lot of suffering going on. And so looking back to my 16-year-old self, my 17, 18, 19, all those years, if I had known then that my feelings were coming from thought in the moment, it would have stopped all that suffering. It would have absolutely, I would just, maybe I'd have got curious about more, instead of being angry, cross, upset, depressed, I would have been more curious about what was going on for him. Because I would have had I think snap, what happens now when I remember, so I can still get caught up in these sorts of stories. And then I remember, because now I know, once you know this, you can't forget it. It might elude you, and some people, it eludes them for weeks and weeks and weeks. I know that happens to people. Sometimes it eludes you for a few seconds or a few minutes, but the thing is, once you've seen this for yourself, once you've seen that this works one way, you can't ever really forget it. You can't forget it forever. It always comes back to you. It's like, oh yeah, it works one way. So when I remember, when it comes back to me and I remember, what happens then is I can get curious about, oh, I wonder what, you know, I can get curious about the other person. It's like, oh yeah, it's me that's making that stuff up. Innocently, no, you know, that was a little sort of phase I went through as well when I came across this, is this about responsibility, and I started having misunderstanding about, oh, I'm making it up, it must be my fault. So I need to look at the way I think about things, because you know, if I'm creating this and I'm not creating a good feeling, then that must be my fault. And I had to see through all that sort of types of thinking as well, and see, and actually, well, there's another thought. How interesting that I'm believing that one. So it can go on and on and on like that, because we live in a world of thought. We live a world of, you know, as I'm speaking to you, I'm making up a whole reality, a whole experience of us being together and relaying my story to you. So it's forever happening. It's never not happening. So understanding that's really, really big. For me, it's been huge. And I say, you know, and the other piece of the puzzle is this absolutely knowing that I'm okay, whatever, because I'm not my thinking. I'm not what I think I am. So I don't know whether to go in that direction, but it's this absolutely knowing that everything's okay. The only thing that stops me knowing I'm okay is believing that I'm not. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
Well, I want to know that it makes sense to the people that will watch.
That's what I'm. If anyone would like to ask a question, you can type into the chat box, or you can put your hand up and you can ask. And you can even come on screen if you want to. But while we wait and see, nobody's done that so far. So while I'm waiting to see if anyone does, how has that made a difference in your relationships now? What's changed in your relationships? That would be really useful to know.
Well, interestingly, you know, having this inside out understanding of the 3 principles, I split up with my partner nearly 3 years ago. So it's not like it's a magic prescription that makes all relationships hunky-dory. I see that as being absolutely okay. The difference that it's made is that it made that breakup of relationship very gentle and easy. That's the thing I can point to there, is there was no drama. Like my past relationships there had been so much drama in splitting up with breaking down of relationships. on both sides. But this one, we both had an understanding of the 3 principles, and it was pretty straightforward. It was pretty straightforward. We both came to a place where we knew, and it comes back to that, I talked earlier on about knowing. I just knew. We both came to at the same time, both knew it was time to finish the relationship. We just knew. There's just a knowing. I'm sure people know what I mean. I hope they know what I mean. When you just know something's right, and you just know you need to do something, you just know. We can call that wisdom, we can call it intuition, you can call it gut feeling. There's all sorts of terms for it, but it's just, there wasn't any doubt in my mind that this is what needed to happen. And it's never been any different since the time that we broke up. So nothing's changed. I knew it was the right decision, and it definitely was the right decision. So it made that if I felt any sort of stress or upset, and I was sad, I'm not saying I wasn't sad. It was a 12 going on 13-year relationship. So there's a lot of sadness, but that's okay, because I didn't need to do anything about it, because I knew that the sadness was thought in the moment. It wasn't anything that I needed to change. It wasn't anything I needed to do. And I kind of went with it. I was going to say enjoyed it in a way, but I saw it as normal. I saw it as something that was happening in the moment, and it was perfectly okay. And I think that's another part of the puzzle as well, if you like. Something that's come out of this understanding is being absolutely okay with our feelings, because I understand where they're coming from and what they mean now, whereas I used to think it meant something about me and I had to do something.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I saw when I came to this understanding, because I'd been doing hypnotherapy and NLP and all of those things to fix myself, even though, like you said, even though I knew it was coming from the inside, that meant there was something wrong with me. And so I had been spending years trying to fix myself and get rid of all these beliefs and get rid of all these feelings and get rid of, which of course you can't. And the more you try, the worse you feel. And it's so exhausting.
It is.
So once I realized that was the first thing when I came to this understanding, was I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with these feelings. There's nothing wrong with these thoughts. They'll just pass and they're okay. They don't even need to pass. And like you said, if I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling sad. That's okay. And as long as I'm not afraid of it, that's great. So the other thing that I noticed when you spoke about your relationship ending, well, two things really about your relationship ending, was one, that there was no big hole anymore. Right?
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, absolutely. And what I didn't add was, this is I am now, it's my very first experience of living all on my own. And I was terrified of that in my teen, break every relationship that ended, there was another one, or I was living with my children. So as a single mom, I had 2 children, I was living with them. But I'd never, ever experienced living on my own until 3 years ago when we broke up. And I've absolutely loved it, I have to say.
And the only difference is that you understand that you are good enough as you are. You don't have to be. Your happiness is not dependent on something from outside of you, and you are good enough whatever happens. That really makes a huge difference. I had the same thing. I've been through the same thing too. So. And the other thing about it was something similar. A part of the same thing was, now I've forgotten. It's coming back to me. It was to do with this, when you're ending the relationship like that. It was like you weren't hanging on to it. So that was the other thing that I used to do, is I had that knowing. In one of my marriages, for example, I knew that I should be finishing it, that this is the end, and that there's but then there would be this thinking that would be, oh yes, but you'll be on your own, you'll have that big hole, or you won't, it'll show that you're not good enough, or you have to prove that you are good enough, or you have to prove that you can make this work. That was another one of mine. You can't get out of it. You've got to prove that it can work. And particularly since I was a relationship therapist, that didn't really help, supposedly. But but once you see that, and I didn't know that I didn't have to listen to that thinking. So the knowing was there. The knowing was there. But at that time, I thought that the thinking was also guiding me. And it was only when I came across this understanding that I realized that, oh no, that's not guiding me at all. That's just thought in the moment. Don't have to listen to that.
I think that's a really great point. And you know, when you were talking, I was thinking, I think there were a few times in that relationship that both of us probably, well, no, not probably, I know, because we had that we, you know, talked about splitting up. But we listened to the thinking in the moment, as you said. And there was also that element of, well, we've got an understanding of how life works. Surely we should be able to make this work. A bit like you're saying with the relationship stuff. But actually, you know, it was such a relief for both of us when we both, I suppose, surrendered to the knowing. I said, you know what, we both know this is not working. Let's just do it. You know, let's just listen to that and stop trying so hard, because there was nothing seriously wrong. You know, it's not like we had massive arguments or just it drifted apart. It just went stale, if you like. And I, you know, I think, again, I think, but my opinion on that is that happens in relationship. Who said relationships are for life? That's something a story that we believe, you know, believing my romantic fairy tales, they're supposed to be for life. You're supposed to live happily ever after. But who made that story up? I don't know. But many people around the world are trying to live into that story that's just unrealistic. It works for some people, but I think majority of people it doesn't. So it's kind of dropping that story as well. It really is this, you know, I think it's actually a term that Jamie Smart uses, is subtractive psychology. That's what I love about this, is it's a taking away of. Like you talked about the NLP and the hypnotherapy and me too, been there, done that, tried to get rid of the limiting beliefs, tried to do this, tried to do that, tried to, you know, with Louise Hay work, it was positive affirmations, be positive. And it for me, it was just an adding, it's like more noise, adding more noise to, got to remember to do this, need to do that, need to think about this, need to think about that, this is, actually, I don't need to think about anything. It's just like, no, it's like, let it fall away. See what's there when that falls away. And I'm not suggesting that we can live in a state of no thought, because I've tried that too. I don't think that place exists. But it's this seeing through thought, you know, seeing through, oh, I don't have to believe every thought that comes along, sort of thing. It's like being on one of those sushi bars, you know, where the sushi goes round and round and round. It's like trying to cram every single one that comes along. Oh, I've got to eat that one now, I've got to eat that. You don't. You just pick one and you eat that one. You don't have to eat everything that comes along. Yeah, that's a funny analogy, but yeah. You're muted, Anne.
I thought I'd undone it. You're right, thanks. So yeah, that would be a bit sick making, right, to eat all of it. So that's, I think you've just covered so much, Sheela. That's really, really good. Thank you very much. And that was, I love the story. That really shows it so well, and such a common story. So many people, you know, like, the amount of times I've been through that in my life. And so,
well, I bet as a relationship therapist, you probably heard it many times.
Yeah. Well, most of the reason I was doing that was to try and fix my own, wasn't it?
Yeah, haven't we all been down that road and picked up tools to fix other people, but really we need them, yeah.
But now we're all having fun instead. So you will, excuse me, this has been lovely, ladies. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gillian. Yeah. So let's leave it at that then for now, Sheela. That's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. And I'll put all the links for you and for Viva and so on below the.
Great. Thank you.
so that people
And
know.
I just, you know, I forgot to say at the beginning, I meant to say, and just really, 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 you know, huge shout out to you for this, that you've done, what you've created here. You know, it's almost 2 months, isn't it, of interviews with different people. I think
Yeah,
it's
just
a
2
marathon.
months. Yeah.
It's an absolute marathon, and I know how it is to set up a week. So to do 2 months, I think you've done an amazing job. So thank you, because this is going to be a fabulous resource. I'm sure it will be.
Well, thanks very much. It was not, yeah, it just happened. It just happened. And I expect I will be seeing you at Viva.
I hope so.
So, okay, so thanks
Thank
very
you,
much,
Anne.
Sheila. I'll see you again
Take
soon.
care. Bye.
Bye then.